video for all you sickos that enjoy listening to scary things to fall asleep. And there's no judgment here because I am one of yous. I really like scary things to fall asleep to. So these are as true as I can possibly verify. Ghost stories that have been told to me by my extremely skeptical family members over the years. I think what lends to their credibility is that nobody talked about it at the time. Everybody has had very similar experiences. I can confidently list off about 6 sources. But I think everybody was too scared and afraid of being seen as crazy or paranoid or a bit woo-woo in the 70s and 80s to talk about these. So these were kind of told for the first time when I was a little kid, and they used to scare the shit out of me. So now I'm here to scare the shit out of you. So something about my family is that both of my grandpas were in the church. My dad's dad was an Episcopalian priest, but all of the stories I'm going to tell you are about my mum's side of the family, where her dad, my grandpa, was a Church of England vicar. So my mum and her siblings grew up in vicarages, which are usually very old, usually very large, and usually very decrepit, and just kind of falling apart. Very little modern amenities, such as like heating on every floor, plumbing on every floor, like outside toilets kind of thing. I think it's probably different now because there's more rules about, in the UK there's more rules about like acceptable living conditions, especially for children, but in the 70s it was a bit more lackadaisical. The first vicarage was in a place called Harlow, where my mum lived until she was about 4, and my uncle would have been 6. And my mum's first memory is when she was about to go to bed. She remembers looking across the room and seeing my granny putting my uncle to bed, reading him a story, and waiting her turn to be tucked in. And all of a sudden, she was about 4 years old here, and she remembers a extremely heavy weight suddenly on her chest, as if someone was sitting on her, and she suddenly couldn't move or speak. She could only move her eyeballs, and she could look over at her mum and her brother, just a few feet away from her, but she couldn't call out, reach out, move her body, and she just remembers being paralysed there. I think the thing that scares me the most is that she describes whatever was sitting on her as knowing it was, her words, pure evil, knowing that it wanted to hurt her, understanding that it wanted to scare her, and very malevolent presence. And obviously she's terrified because she's about 4, and she's there for a few minutes, and then it suddenly goes, and she's able to move again, and speak, and she doesn't tell anybody about it because she doesn't think anyone will believe her. It's very likely that her brother also had very similar experiences because, and this is a kid who had a dangerous lack of fear. Like, he was very renowned by everyone who's ever met him for getting into these like insane accidents because, he climbed off a building or something. This kid was terrifyingly unafraid of the world. But he would climb into bed with my mum in the middle of the night, and wouldn't explain why he had to do that. But she remembers him being very scared and saying that he didn't want to be in bed alone that night a few times. They would also hear in the hallways a shuffling sound with followed by kind of a scraping sound, kind of like someone kind of dragging something along the floorboards in the corridor in the hallway outside their room on the landing. And they would hear that in the middle of the night. And my granny remembers hearing that too. But my grandparents didn't really put too much credence in it. A little known fact about the Church of England is that paranormal beliefs such as like demons in possession are really not part of the doctrine like it is in kind of more charismatic Protestantism, like Pentecostals, evangelicals, and Catholicism of course as well. They have a lot of beliefs about possession, demons, that kind of stuff. It doesn't really exist in the Church of England. It's not part of their belief system. I think people are not really focused on that. But so it was kind of dismissed, and they thought there'd be a more simpler explanation. But these sounds and experiences continued for a long time until they hosted a Catholic nun, for a few nights. I think they were probably paid. There was some partnership or something where the Catholic Church paid for them to host her and feed her and make sure she got around all right. And this nun comes down to breakfast one morning and looks at my grandpa in the eye and says very calmly and plainly, "Kenneth, I'm afraid you have a ghost." And she explained to him what she knew about that based off of the teachings of the Catholic Church, and he was surprisingly open to that. And he called the previous vicar of the vicarage. It was, an old man at the time, and explained what had been going on. And the vicar said, and this still gives me chills, "I'm so sorry. I've told Mother to stop it." And he described that he had lived in that vicarage for many years with his elderly mother, who was so mean, hated children, and just got a lot of pleasure out of being cruel to others, and that had gotten really accentuated in her old age. And she used to roam at night with her Zimmer frame. In America you'd call that a walker, which would explain the kind of clattering and dragging sound on the hallway. So the nun and my grandpa that night decided to do kind of a exorcism of sorts, led by her. That's just not a Church of England thing. I don't think my grandpa would really know how to do that, or even what prayers to even say. So she kind of led him through that. And they woke up the next morning, not really sure if that had done anything, but they reported that it never happened again after that. So that is their house, the vicarage in Essex. Now most of the stories now take place in this second vicarage in Suffolk, in Felixstowe, which is where my mum grew up mostly. And this house was massive. It was an old Victorian vicarage, 3 stories, but just like, very basic amenities, like, I don't think the top floor had heating. I don't think there was plumbing in all the floors. They still had an outside toilet. So this is an old spooky house, just as is. I can tell you because I have been there a couple times. But pretty much every family member I know has had a paranormal experience in this house. My mum, who obviously I've heard the most from, recounts. So she had a bedroom on the 2nd floor, and her older brother had a bedroom on the 3rd floor. Nobody, even adults, except for my grandparents, would be caught dead on the 3rd floor. I've been on the 3rd floor, and as soon as you get up there, there is a feeling that you cannot breathe. I don't really believe in ghosts. ghosts. I really don't. But the feeling when you get up there, even if it is in the middle of a beautiful sunny day, with all the light streaming in, and visually it looks very inviting, you feel like you cannot breathe when you are up there. It feels like you've inhaled a bunch of dust, and there's this tightness, and this kind of tightness in your head as well as your chest, that I have never experienced before and have never experienced again. My uncle had his bedroom up there, and my mum used to get so annoyed at him because a lot of nights she would hear him moving his furniture around and stamping and being so noisy that she would not be able to sleep. She would confront him about it the next morning and be like, "What the hell? I didn't sleep at all last night. Why did you think it was alright to rearrange your entire room at 3 in the morning and do it so noisily?" And he would deny it every time. But obviously it was him, because there was no one else up there. So she didn't believe him. Until it happened a couple years later, very repeatedly. And she realised that he'd probably been telling the truth the entire time, because it started happening when he was away at boarding school. So it wasn't him. So who was it? Which is terrifying. So yeah, who was rearranging furniture at 3 in the morning for all those years on the 3rd floor? Other family members who have stayed on that floor, because we used to have guest bedrooms. They used to have guest bedrooms up there, reported also hearing furniture being moved around, and confirming with getting up in the night and being like, "Who the fuck's doing that?" And obviously no one's coming forward. Everybody's waking up saying like, "Oh my god, yeah, I heard it too. What was that?" And then 2 family members on separate occasions. These are probably about 10 years apart from each other, and they were not on the same side of the family as each other, so they were not related to each other, so they would have never been able to talk, especially at the time where there was no social media or anything. Reported seeing a young woman in her 20s, come into their room in the middle of the night wearing kind of a navy and white Victorian maid's outfit. The house is from the Victorian era, early 1800s. Coming into the room and kind of looking blankly and then leaving without acknowledging that they were there, which is very scary. It's scary that they saw the same woman twice. And after that, nobody would stay up there. I think too many people had too many experiences, and even though no one was really conferring, there was very much a consensus that we don't go on the 3rd floor. Only Ed, my uncle, is mad enough to stay up there. So yeah, I think that's most of it. Obviously, there was a lot of things that could be very easily explained away, like cupboard doors being left open and windows being left open, and I guess what you would call poltergeist activity, things like moving without it being clear how they got there. I think these things are easily debunked, so I won't go into too much detail on them. But yeah, that's the vicarage. Everybody was fucking terrified of the vicarage. And we broke in when I was about 13, when it was abandoned because it was condemned, obviously. The church that my grandpa was a vicar at, they built another one close by and left this one. So we went in and had a look around, and without anyone having told me any of this, it was very obvious to me that something had happened on the 3rd floor. I don't really believe in the paranormal. I'm open to it because I know too many reasonable people that have had experiences that they can't explain, and I don't want to, say that they're lying. I don't know. I don't have any concrete opinions. I like to think that I'm open, because this is such a cultural phenomenon. A cross-cultural phenomenon. Like, this exists in every culture, and so I do want to be open. But yeah, it's pretty clear that something really fucked up happened on that floor. And yeah, I understand why my family was so afraid. It makes me laugh though, they are so British, that they never talked about it with each other. They would have these experiences, I think, except for the time when my mum would be annoyed at my uncle for moving the furniture, or other people getting annoyed at each other thinking that someone was moving furniture in the middle of the night. Other than that, these experiences were not talked about. I think there's a real attitude in British culture, especially among older generations, of like, you don't want people to think that you're crazy, or you don't want people to think that you're making a fuss, or that you're that you haven't got your head screwed on right, that you're not this kind of pragmatic, straight shooting, stiff upper lip person. So yeah, this all came out when I was a kid, and everybody kind of was like, oh yeah, I've seen that ghost, I've seen that lady, I've heard those noises. Which, yeah, was very scary but very fun to be a kid at that time. But yeah, tell me what you think. Tell me, do you think this could be explained by natural phenomenon, or do you think that this could be the only explanation could be that of paranormal activity? Yeah, I want to know what you think. Let me know in the comments, or share your experiences of ghosts or paranormal activity, or experiences that you can't explain. And yeah, I'm looking forward to reading those. I hope you found this relaxing. I should preface that no one ever got hurt or traumatized. Everybody still actually does have very fond memories of that house. I think it was a real gathering place for my entire extended family, and I think my parents had their wedding reception there, and everybody did actually like going there. It wasn't awful. It was just the house came alive at night, it seemed. Yeah, I hope this was relaxing, and it's not going to keep you up even more.